Of the countless natural wonders on the planet Mobius, none can compare to the awe and majesty of the fabled floating island. Its secrets, including those of the legendary Chaos Emerald, are preserved and protected by Knuckles the Echidna. He is the most current sentinel in a long line of guardians. Though forever apart from the affairs of those who dwell below, the island has its own unique tales of triumph and tragedy. Raised to lofty heights by the power of science, technology would eventually prove a double-edged sword, and a culture's ultimate downfall. Once home to the most advanced society in living memory, the land has since reverted back to wilderness. But buried deep beneath the shadow of Mount Fate lie signposts to a checkered past, and the artifacts of days perhaps best forgotten. Still, history has a knack for refreshing the memories of those who fail to heed its lessons. And that is where our story begins. Hello everyone, I'm Felicia Rondo, and that's Cluster over there.
Hey ho!
And this is Bitsley Book Club. Today we're covering Sonic's Friendly Nemesis, Knuckles the Echidna.
Yeah.
A 3-issue miniseries that eventually, after its follow-up miniseries, became an ongoing comic series.
Yeah. We will definitely be reviewing the sequel miniseries and talking more about that
Yes.
as we get there. But yeah.
I'm so excited that we're finally getting to this because we've been meaning to do it for a while, and
yeah, I wasn't feeling very well, so
yeah, and
kind of ended up putting it off. But we're here now.
We're here now. Hey Freyo, welcome to the stream. We're just
Hey there, Freya.
doing a little bit of a preamble before we get into the comic itself, because this comic, like this stream, I guess, had its fair share of false starts before it finally got off the ground and happened.
Yeah, and also just it, had lead-in that was intended, and some lead-in that was not necessarily intended.
Yeah. There was supposed to be lead-in the Archie Sonic main series, and there was, but due to issues that escape me now, there were just various
things like I know. So this is, of course, this is Sonic Friendly Nemesis, Knuckles Echidna, written by Ken Penders and Mike Kantarovitz, penciled by Art Mawhinney. I didn't check to see if the inker and color and letter are the same all throughout, but
I think Harvey Marcaducasio did some of the inks at least.
Yeah, but Ken Penders has, stated many things over the years. He quite a bit of behind-the-scenes knowledge, because he worked on the book for so long.
Yeah.
That you can find from him.
Yeah.
He's talked about how a lot of things came to be, and for example, some of the preamble for Knuckles, currently Nemesis Knuckles here, wasn't supposed to exist because the book was supposed to come out 3 months, I think, earlier.
Yeah.
So there were multiple B stories that were only a couple pages long that ended up getting inserted into the Sonic main series.
Yeah.
It's why so many covers of that series say solo Knuckles story inside, because there were more solo Knuckles stories than there were supposed to be.
Yeah.
Just to sort of buy time until it was actually time for this mini.
Yeah. And I believe it worked out so that by the time it actually got off the ground, Scott Fulop had moved on from being editor, and it was now the role of Justin Freddie Gabri to be the editor of the comic.
Yeah. Who would, of course, go on to be... I believe, the longest-running editor on any Sonic comic.
I did the math. I checked and I double checked, and yeah, he is pretty handily the longest serving editor.
Yeah, honestly, there's a name that doesn't get brought up enough just for like how long and how much impact he had on Sonic comics.
Yeah, and I certainly think it's pretty big that the longest serving Sonic editor who saw the most iconic Sonic comic series through its greatest years was a Latino man. I think it's really cool, and also that
Yeah,
he helped bring on one of the first and few black writers that the Sonic series has ever had, in Carl
yeah.
Bullers. Just there's a lot to be proud of with Archie Sonic, and I'm certainly really excited that we're finally getting to it with the Knuckles miniseries here, which is just an example of one of its best stories.
Yeah, and we'll definitely be reading more because we have a lot of love for these. But
Yeah.
we're starting here, and by starting here, we're starting a little bit before here to sort of give a bit of context for what this story is.
Yeah. Like,
Because there were stories setting up this story in, of course, the main series, in the Knuckles Chaotix special, in the Sonic and Knuckles special,
in the
in the
Sonic
Triple
Trouble
Trouble special.
Yeah.
Um, you know, there was just a bit of Knuckles in all of these places, and a lot of Knuckles in the Chaotix and the Sonic and Knuckles, of course. But
And it was a good thing, too, because back then, and true enough today, Knuckles is a big deal.
yeah, Knuckles has always been a pretty popular character, and the reason why Knuckles got a monthly series was just because of fan demand. People wanted it.
Yeah, and sure enough, they're working on a new Knuckles series right now over at Paramount in connection to those Sonic movies that really got a big boost from having Knuckles in them.
Yeah, like the second movie really hinged all of its advertising on Knuckles, and I think Knuckles' presence had a big thing to do with why it did better than the first movie, which was already a record setter.
Yeah, so Knuckles is a big deal today, and he was a big deal back then. And, yeah, so. But there wasn't a lot to go on for Knuckles back then, the way there is now.
Yeah.
And so,
So to just briefly go over like what the story, how we got here. Basically, Knuckles was just on the island like he does with his friends the Chaotix, who we met in the Chaotix special and became a group with. When he started being beset upon by a mysterious foe who identified himself as Archimedes.
which Knuckles commented sounded like a history lesson.
It was very fun. And eventually Archimedes' attacks became more extreme, and in fact, Archimedes has kidnapped the Chaotix.
Yeah, which was not
Which,
a cool move.
also, for those who aren't remembering how things were back in the 90s as opposed to nowadays in Sonic, the Chaotix, of course, Knuckles, Espio, Vector, Sarmy, and Mikey the Armadillo.
Yeah.
Knuckles has not been kidnapped, but the other four,
Yes.
they've been kidnapped.
And they're not detectives either.
No.
That's a big thing.
Heroes did a lot.
Yeah. As did these comics. But yeah. It the Chaotix, that being Vector, Charmy, Espio, and Mighty, got kidnapped, and Knuckles kind of had to figure out what to do about that.
Yeah. And for those of you not aware, Heavy and Bomb were also in the Chaotix special, but they didn't formally become part of the Chaotix. They would later go on to be characters in the main Sonic series.
I believe they were part of the Royal Secret Service?
Yes, they were part of that, which we will definitely, I think, have to cover some of those.
Oh, definitely.
Those were some fun stories.
Yeah, love Jeffrey St. John.
But as you were mentioning, there wasn't a lot to go on for the writers back then, because, the Sonic games back then only really had manual stories, and, whatever happened in the game, and there was, of course, no dialogue in the games, and so...
And I think,
they're just
if I may, I think a lot of Sonic fans who aren't writers or storytellers, I think they can tend to get in their heads like, well, obviously there's story to these old games. It's right there in the manual. But the thing is, if you're a writer, you're looking for more detail and foundation than what a little game manual will give you.
yeah. Game manual stories were less stories and more setup. They were something to give you a premise so that you felt like you had a goal.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that when you are writing a full comic or a television series, like the cartoons,
Yeah.
that's not a lot to go on because, a manual story won't even feel like an episode of a cartoon.
Right.
A full, 22-minute, once commercials are cut out episode, you need more than that. And so, all the writers, whether it was from the Saturday morning cartoon, whether it was from, Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, or later on Sonic Underground, all these, writers from the cartoons and the comics needed to come up with their own stuff.
Yeah. Unless you're working on Sonic Underground, in which case you just put fucking Aether in the episode.
Well, there was a lot of original stuff too.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
Not to take away from it. I also really like Sonic Underground. But yeah.
So when Ken was writing this story, something that he did was actually start to flesh out Knuckles' backstory.
Yeah.
And there was a 3-part, after the cat got captured, there was a 3-part B story featuring Knuckles called A Sense of History, I believe?
Yeah.
In which Knuckles wanders as he sort of tries to, wonder what to do with the character being kidnapped, and, I believe he's been taunted by Archimedes, that if he'd just stuck with his friends and worked together, rather than, trying to solve the problem, then he could have, not gotten his friends all kidnapped.
Yeah.
And Archimedes is watching him through a hidden camera. And Archimedes is also being watched through a hidden camera by a different mysterious stranger. So there's recursive, mysterious strangers watching each other through cameras, and it's very silly, and I love that part.
It's really fun.
But when Knuckles goes and wanders, he finds himself in the shadow of Mount Fate.
Yeah.
Which is a big, crumbly-looking mountain with a skull face on it.
Yeah.
Kind of scary.
And it's in those stories that we learn the story of how the floating island came to be floating.
Yeah. In this universe.
Yeah.
And what a tale it is.
Yeah.
A tale that we are told 3 times over the course of the storyline.
Yeah.
So...
But yeah, it's, there's a meteorite coming down, that's going to strike their...
Yeah. Well, to give more setup, as Knuckles tells it, his father told him the story, which is that back in, ancient history, basically, the Echidnas were the most advanced civilization on Mobius, and they've got, big gleaming towers and cities and all that, and all the science in the world.
Yeah.
And while 2 Echidna astrologists were sort of charting out space, one of them noticed that there was a massive white comet on a collision course with Echidnapolis. And so they concoct a plan to not die.
Yeah. And, it gets covered before the miniseries, as we mentioned, but it also kind of gets recapped in the second issue of the miniseries, so we can kind of get more into the details there. But, basically, the fellow astrologist and wife of one of the other There's two astrologists. There's a husband and wife.
Yeah, I don't believe either are named here. They might have been named later, but I don't hold me to remembering these names because they're not terribly important. There's other characters that are more important, though.
Yeah, what is important is that it's the woman astrologist who actually figures out the plan, and through her efforts, the floating island floats.
And her husband is basically like, "Oh, my wonderful wife, you have done this," and I love that.
It's so good. It's just so good. He's just loving his wife, and that's so good for him. And I just think it's pretty fun that that Ken would go out of his way to just establish that the floating island floated because of a woman's efforts, moving heaven and earth.
Yeah. Yeah, but I guess just to quickly go over it, basically, they went out. They got Chaos Emeralds, 12 of them, because, again, this is the 90s.
Yeah,
and look, you just look at what the Sonic cartoons are doing with Chaos Emeralds.
Okay, just...
Weird stuff.
Don't you just give this comic a hard time.
Like, no ancillary media had, like, a good idea of what the idea of the Emeralds was meant to be. Sega did not, like, give outline materials to its writers.
Not very nice, yeah.
Yeah, so they just kind of had to make it up, and so there's just bunches and bunches of Chaos Emeralds, and they're all green, had been set up previously in this comic series.
Mm-hmm.
So they gathered 12 of them, and they put them in this crystalline chamber in the underground, and it lifts the island up into the air, and then it's in the air forever.
Yep.
As is discovered by two Echidna scientists, descendant of these other Echidna scientists.
Yeah. Edmund and
brothers.
Dimitri.
Yeah. Very important names that we will be referring to often as we go through various Knuckles comics.
Yeah.
Because Edmund and Dimitri had a plan.
Yeah.
Because, we meet them doing readings as Knuckles is telling the story, and they are discovering that the Emeralds have not lost any power since they've been put in the Chaos Chamber. Their output has maintained consistent throughout the many, many years that they can be keeping the island afloat. Dimitri muses about how the Emeralds could be used to generate unlimited energy.
Yeah.
Before they...
But Edmund chides his brother and tells him to focus more on the task at hand.
Yes, and they go to present their idea to the Council of Science, or however it goes.
Yeah.
They mostly just refer to them as the Council, so whatever their specific title is escapes me, but the Council.
And they make a very well argued presentation, and they do
basically
a good job.
They've made a device, the Chaos Siphon, and their idea is that it would slowly drain the energy from the Chaos Emeralds, so that the island would slowly descend, and eventually just come to a nice, gentle rest back on the Earth, back on the land, and they would no longer be floating.
Yeah, just, be back to being grounders.
Yeah.
But, Dimitri was so sure.
Dimitri is certain. He's like, the council will have no choice but to... And then, or before he can even say it, the magistrate denies their petition to do their science.
Yep. Just says it's unproven and blah, blah, blah. And...
doesn't want to risk the lives of everyone on the island with something that might go horribly wrong.
And
Dimitri doesn't take that well.
He really doesn't take it well, gotta say.
Storms off saying that the facts will
justify him or something.
Yeah, something like that.
And Edmund's like, oh man, that's my brother. Sorry man, I gotta go check on him. And and when he does, oh poor Dimitri. He's gone to the Chaos Siphon. He's taken it. And yeah, just
Yeah, he took the Chaos Siphon from their house, which, Ed went to their house but found it was gone.
mm-hmm.
And when he, of course, realized what Dimitri was up to, ran to the Chaos Chamber, found Dimitri already sucking the power from the emeralds. Dimitri just yelling about how he's gonna work and he's gonna sew all those fools, and then the siphon explodes as the magistrate and a random guard come in.
Yeah.
And everyone assumes that Dimitri has been killed by the explosion, as the explosion has also drained 11 of the 12 Chaos Emeralds, leaving them only blackened husks behind.
Yes.
And leaving just a single Chaos Emerald to keep the island afloat. And as they wonder if just one emerald can truly keep their island afloat, Dimitri assures them that it will, as its power is infinite. Much like his own, as he is now a living Chaos Emerald.
Yeah.
Infused with the energies of 11 Chaos Emeralds.
Yeah. Which is something, alright?
Yeah.
Something.
In short order, he erects a massive tower to his glory that just kind of looks like Castle Grayskull.
Yeah.
Or whichever one from the
That's the
He-Man.
That's
that
the
was
He-Man
the evil one.
Yeah. Castle Grayskull.
It's got a skull on it. It's kind of like a sword.
Yeah.
Big sword-shaped tower. I do not actually watch He-Man. It's just a cultural icon. He imprisons the magistrate, his brother, and the random guard who just happened to be there.
Really bad day for him.
Wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah.
And when they awake inside the tower, he reveals his terrible plans, which he is already putting into motion, as he has already enslaved the entire populace of Echidnapolis. And he is planning to put massive sails onto the towers of the cities of Echidnapolis.
Yes.
And fly the island around like a great pirate ship.
Yeah.
Bringing, I believe he said, enlightenment to the peoples of the world.
And thank goodness. Oh.
He shows off how mighty his power is, as he's made this tower so strong, even he can't destroy it.
Yeah. But, what he didn't count on was some fire ants coming to foil his plot.
Yeah, so a bunch of fire ants come and eat through the shackles that have kept his prisoners there, and they eat through the foundations. And as Dimitri just stands there, in shock, that he's being foiled by ants, the ceiling collapses onto him. His prisoners all escape barely in time, and he is trapped under the rubble that he specifically created to be so strong he couldn't destroy it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A little bit of hubris. A little bit of hubris went on. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just a slight amount of hubris on the part of Dimitri.
Yeah.
And then, as Knuckles' story goes, the people of Echidnapolis denounced their technology, tore down their city, and put all of their relics down into what they call the Grand Conservatory. They placed all their technology there and just abandoned it. And that's when Knuckles realizes that's where Archimedes must be.
Yeah.
In the Grand Conservatory.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we meet Knuckles, now that we finally begin the miniseries. As he has entered the Grand Conservatory, looking for Archimedes and looking for the Chaotix.
Yeah. Also, that little narration we did at the start was could be found at the beginning of the comic. Here.
There's a few paragraphs of narration at the beginning of each of these issues, and that's something that would continue into the ongoing Knuckles series for most of its run, I believe. I think it
Yeah.
stopped doing it towards the end.
I think by
Uh,
like 25.
yeah, but there was definitely a long just history of like these very nice passages talking about Knuckles and all that, and
Mm-hmm.
it was cool.
Yeah. And yeah. So Knuckles is there in a vast underground complex, and it's. I mean, if I may get into the comic itself.
Well,
Um,
yeah, because now that we've now
hmm,
caught everyone up on how we got here to
hmm,
this miniseries. Now the miniseries.
yeah. It's this the Grand Conservatory. It's armed to the teeth. The
Mm-hmm.
chamber's lousy with motion sensors. Everything from tripwires to pressure plates to complex infrared arrays. There's trap doors and deadfalls as far as the electric eye can see, booby traps, both ridiculous and exotic. And,
Yeah. All dialogue direct from Knuckles' thought bubbles.
yeah. Knuckles decides to cope with all this by flying right through.
Yep, just setting off every trap,
Yeah,
dodging them, and then setting the traps against one another,
yeah.
um, all dramatically, leaping through.
Mm-hmm. And, it's there after everything is just blown to bits. Knuckles asks himself, how'd I get myself into this mess? And it's there we get our first retelling in this miniseries of the backstory that we've already gone through.
Yeah, in particular, we get a very abridged recap of the storylines that led up to here with
Mm-hmm.
Archimedes, the Echidna history, Dimitri and Edmund, and then all the technology being put away in the conservatory beneath the
Yeah.
shadow of Mount Fate.
Mm-hmm. And
A very abridged version, but if you haven't read the stuff before, it gives you the major points across.
yeah, and there's also a bit of a dialogue at the start where Knuckles remarks that when he wasn't looking, Archimedes put the snatch on the Chaotix, and I would just like to mention that in subsequent releases, like in the Knuckles archives, it was changed. The dialogue was changed from that, presumably. Oh god. Presumably because Snatch can sometimes be
Slang
slang
for
for
vagina.
vagina, and instead they wrote Archimedes kidnapped the Chaotix, and there's this
And it's just,
yeah,
there's no need. It's just, we only bring it up because it's very silly that it changed at all. It's not something I think anyone should give notice to in general, without like,
yeah,
if they hadn't changed it, I wouldn't have thought anything about it.
yeah, just you know, just a little weird, little puritanical.
It's just bizarre.
um, but Knuckles eventually he continues onward, making sure to reference Raiders of the Lost Ark while he's at it.
Yeah, he does a little. So as we go forward after the recap,
Mm-hmm.
the pages start to have the top two-thirds being taken up by the axe in hand, with the bottom third being taken up by a different sequence of events.
Yeah.
So while Knuckles is escaping from a boulder, we look at the shadow. We look at Mount Fate and its big skull, with
Mm-hmm.
the moon behind it, and it's rumbling.
Yeah.
And as Knuckles dodges into a door to escape, uh, the boulder, which gets stuck in the door, Mount Fate explodes.
Yeah.
So things are happening.
Yeah. He, Knuckles makes it into a room of doors.
Yeah, and makes an unfortunate remark about Robotnik, which
Yeah,
I don't appreciate.
I did enjoy that.
No, it's an unfortunate thing that happens in these comics
Mhm.
sometimes.
Yeah. But, Knuckles goes behind one door and finds a concussive blaster. And,
And he makes the bold assumption that this blaster was probably used for digging.
Alright,
See, when I see a
Knuckles.
concussive blaster, I assume it was used for shooting people, but I mean, maybe it was used for digging. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Knuckles might.
Uh,
Yeah.
he takes it with him in case he runs across any more obstacles, immediately finding a very sturdy steel door.
And
Uh,
at the bottom of that page, Enerjack is is in silhouette, free from Mount Fate.
well, we don't know
Hmm.
that name yet.
Oh, damn it.
He hasn't introduced himself yet.
Okay,
But
sorry.
yes, Dimitri, who in a moment will call himself Enerzak,
Yeah.
is raising his arms because after 10,000 years he's free. It's
Son
not
of a-
actually 10,000 years.
Yeah. And Knuckles blasts the door to bits, and Dimitri rises from the mountain like a fucking volcano.
Yeah. He has a staff now, which he didn't have before, and he's also has this, this very intricate armor on him
Yeah.
that we can see very well in this page and panel as he rises from Mount Fate.
And then Archimedes monologues to Knuckles, recapping what he's been through and just mentioning that Knuckles has learned and adapted in the situation. And we then see Dimitri flying across the land with the power of
Yeah.
his emeraldness.
Yeah. With green energy trailing behind him as he arrives at the entrance to the Grand Conservatory.
Yeah, where deeper within the Grand Conservatory, Knuckles finds the Chaotix
Alive and well and being fed.
being fed well too.
There's a robot butler.
Yeah.
Everybody's eaten. There's
Mhm.
spare ribs to spare, as Vector states.
And SPO lets Knuckles know that their host has been very gracious, and Mighty adds, "Yeah, and he fed us too."
And we finally see Archimedes. I mean, we technically saw him a little bit in the previous
Yeah.
stories, but
Yeah.
we finally see him full and in color. And he's a fire ant with
With a hat.
what do you call that kind of hat?
I don't know, but it sure is. It sure is a hat.
It's like a cowboy hat bit with the one
One side of
hat
it is like going
side
up.
of it bent up.
It's been up,
And he's got a vest
with like
and
a
like
tooth necklace.
yeah, a fang necklace. I don't know the fangs of what because he is an ant, and he is an ant-sized ant. I mean, not ant-sized, but like he's smaller than Tarmy.
Yeah, who's a bee.
Mm-hmm. And we see at the bottom of this page Dimitri floating inside the conservatory,
Mm-hmm.
just continuing his journey.
Mm-hmm. And Knuckles lets Vector know upon being offered spare ribs. I don't want lunch, Vector. I want answers. And Archimedes gets a little more teasing in, and
Archimedes is just such a tease.
it's so fun. I love Archimedes, the fire.
They have so much banter
Mm-hmm.
in this story.
Yeah.
And Knuckles shows that he has been doing some thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Figuring out that Archimedes obviously has gotten a hold of his ancestors' abandoned technology, hot-wired the robots, and made them kidnap the Chaotix.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
Energetic
Dimitri
update.
continues. Dimitri continues to float through the conservatory, now floating through the room of traps that Knuckles, set off and took out. Not that
Yeah.
they would have done anything to Dimitri, but
Yeah, yeah.
makes his journey a bit smoother.
Yeah.
And Knuckles is wondering how Archimedes has just been disappearing on him.
Yeah.
Because he's small but hardly invisible.
But then he is, cause he teleports.
Archimedes vanishes in a puff of smoke. Dimitri is now flying through the corridor with all the doors on it.
It's getting closer.
Where Knuckles got his blaster.
Mm-hmm.
And Archimedes reappears in another puff of smoke behind them.
And he says, "Blue smoke and mirrors, the magician's art. A little misdirection goes a long way."
And then he shows off his fire ant ability to breathe literal fire.
Yeah!
We all know from encountering fire ants as children.
Just the little suckers, just little tiny flamethrowers in their mouths.
Mm-hmm. And Knuckles gets a little aggressive. Says, think you're pretty hot stuff, huh?
And to which Archimedes replies, "As a matter of fact, I do." And explains that fire ants have done their fair share of helping Echidna over the years, as far back as the origin of this island.
Yeah, but before they can get more into that, Dimitri speaks up, because as you may remember, the corridor with all the doors in it was right before Knuckles blew open the door to this room.
Yeah.
So our two storylines of Dimitri slowly floating through the conservatory and Knuckles actually doing things convene.
Yeah.
And Dimitri comments how, while fire ants once thwarted him, that was a long time ago, and he has grown and learned and evolved during his imprisonment beneath Mount Fate.
Yeah.
The Echidna scientist Dimitri is no more. Today, Enerzak reigns supreme.
And now I can call him Enerjack. I've been doing it
Yes.
already, but
You already
that's
have been.
appropriate. It's appropriate now.
Yeah, and we finally see him in color, and we see that his armor is gold and blue, with like a red gem on the forehead. It's very sort of Egyptian-y, it's sort of a weird bird motif, and he's got a bird scepter.
Yeah, and it's just just a really good design, I think.
He's very intimidating.
Especially as he's drawn by Art Mawini, who Ken Penders would frequently seek out to have on the comic because, as Ken puts it, he would make the comic look like an episode of Sad AM.
Yeah, and I feel like, if you look at a lot of Art's work on the comic, you generally are going to think of it and associate it with the more cutesy stuff. Because Art has drawn a lot of really adorable stuff on the comic.
Yeah.
But Enerzak definitely shows that art can, really show his stuff as well in the more dramatic stuff.
He's definitely pulling on the muscles that he pulled as he depicted Dr. Robotnik in the Saturday morning Sonic cartoon.
Yeah.
And yeah.
But yeah, upon Dimitri introducing himself as Enerzak, Archimedes is panicking.
Yeah.
Because the great evil of Legend is here.
And Knuckles is not impressed.
He insists that this must be a fraud because Dimitri was crushed by the rubble of his dark tower. And nothing could have survived. To which Enerzak reminds the class that 11 Saturday Chaos Emeralds empower him. He is immortal, eternal, and indestructible.
And Then, famous last words. Knuckles.
Knuckles says, "Well, let's just see how indestructible you are." And the chaotic charge enters Zack for all of 1/2 of 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
As he immediately sets his massive might, stopping them in their tracks.
Yep.
Exploding them across the room.
Mm-hmm.
And then holding them in stasis in place as he continues to monologue.
Yep.
With a very fun line of, "Now that your expected soul resistance has been extinguished, events may proceed in orderly fashion." Wonderful supervillain dialogue from Dimitri from Enerzak here.
Yeah. And, then Knuckles and Archimedes are left stranded in the fucking desert.
Yes,
Sandopolis.
because Enerzak decides that the Chaotix could prove useful, but the descendants of those who arranged his defeat deserve, in his words, a better fate.
Mm-hmm.
And so he banishes them to the desert.
The fucking desert.
Just sand and a few bones as far as the eye can see.
Mm-hmm.
It's seemingly just dooming them to dehydration.
Not great. Not great.
It's not very kind of them to do so.
Kind of a dick move. Kind of a dick move.
I think Enerzak might be a meanie.
Might be a bit of a dick. But,
yeah, and
that's the first issue. And, of course, we get a map of the floating island to go with it.
Yeah, so this is a cool little bonus feature thing. It's just like a little map showing you various things that are on Angel Island. Well, the floating island.
As it was known.
Because they would not call it Angel Island for a long while.
Very long, very long. I think it's like 120...
Yeah, Sonic
something.
the Hedgehog 120 something would be when they actually, in the comic, rechristen it to Angel Island.
In the early 2000s. Just half a decade, well over half a decade after. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it has, various locations for things like where Vector, Charmy, SBO, and Mighty live.
Mm-hmm.
Vector, also, of course, Knuckles' lair, which is a cave he lives in.
Vector, of course, lives in Swampy Swamp. Charmy's hive is located in Strawberry Fields. That's a Beatles reference.
Uh-huh.
And SBO's home is in Rainbow Valley, and Mighty's home is in Rocky Hill. And there's a note here about how unmarked territories are zones yet to be explored in either future adventures or Sega game cartridges.
Which is a thing that the old comics did a lot, is just talk about, oh, your Sega game cartridge, or oh, in the games you play.
Yeah. Also at the bottom here, Flying Battery Zone, Death Egg Zone, and Doomsday Zone do not appear. They occur off-island. So don't call me on that.
But yeah, we have various zones that are actually from, like, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, as well as various comic original locations, like the former site of Echidnapolis, the Grand Conservatory in Mount Fate. Mount Fate, for those interested, right outside of Marble Zone.
Oh, man.
The Grand Conservatory is just, like, underground in Marble Zone.
Man, that's so cool.
Well, you know.
That's so cool.
And then in Mushroom Zone, I love this, it's noted, cave where Knuckles held Sonic and Tails prisoner. From Knuckles' debut issue in the comic.
As one does. Very good.
Yeah. Yeah, just wanted to comment on this fun map. It's a neat little bonus feature.
It's so adorable. And that's the first issue. That's the first part of the miniseries. And already I think it just makes such a good impression.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of really fun dialogue. I think Knuckles has a lot of fun wit.
Yeah.
We've only just begun to get Knuckles' relationship with Archimedes at this point, but already they're having a lot of fun
Yeah.
banter.
Yeah.
Definitely aggressive banter,
Mm-hmm.
and that'll mellow out after a bit.
Yeah.
Um,
To a
but
point, anyway.
yeah,
There's always a degree of why aren't you telling me everything, you asshole?
yeah. Though in fairness, that aspect of the relationship isn't even here yet,
Oh yeah,
as
yeah.
Knuckles does not actually yet realize that Archimedes is holding out on him. And in
Yeah.
fact, we, the audience, actually don't know because there's no hints that Archimedes knows more than he's letting on about.
Yeah.
Which is something that I noticed when we did our read through of this today in preparation for this review.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's a very strong first issue. I think Enerzac makes a very dominating, very impressive first impression.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think it's often said about storytelling that you have to have a good, strong beginning and a strong finish in order to, like, just leave people coming to this story is like, okay, that was good. I had a good time. That was good.
yeah,
But middles are also important.
yeah.
And
The meat of your story is is a lot that happens in the middle there.
and friend of the show and moderator in chat, Ryan writes, y'all don't need to interrupt y'all selves on my behalf, but I'm having the time of my life listening to y'all talk about this issue. I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
Yeah, and I mean, Ryan, if you have any thoughts, feel free to say them in chat as well, because if anybody in chat has questions, for example, or just observations, we don't want to just talk about necessarily our feelings. If someone else has something to bring up, that could lead us to some interesting conversations.
Yeah, this is a book club. We're all here
Yeah,
together, and ideally we can all share our own thoughts about it. But in the
yeah.
meantime, we can just kind of continue along here. We have two more issues, and
Hmm.
yeah, I guess we should go ahead and get started on this second one.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind me reading the opening narration.
But before you do,
Mhm.
something we didn't comment on is actually there is a little I think it's called a frontispiece
Oh yeah.
at the
Hmm.
beginning of the issue, and we didn't comment on it, but it was very nice in the first issue, but especially in the second issue.
Yeah.
There's this nice little introduction of Sonic the Hedgehog, with great reluctance, presents his friendly nemesis Knuckles.
So fun. And Ryan adds, Energex introduction, maybe go back to my local bookshop and look for more Knuckles issues.
That's rad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Enerzac's really cool, honestly. He's definitely a villain that, you know, I really like Enerzac, and I really like Enerzac for reasons that we will get into more, I think, when we get to issue 3, and then
Yeah.
later on when Enerzac returns, because
Hmm. Yeah.
he's a comic book villain. It's not a spoiler that he returns.
We're all good here. We're all having fun.
Um, but yeah, there is a very lovely drawing of Enerzac here in the issue 2 frontispiece, as
Oh yeah.
Enerzac is looking through sort of
A
a
crystal
crystal
ball.
ball esque
Yeah.
smoking circle with his hand all ominous.
Yeah, it's so
Just looking
cool.
great. It's a fantastic illustration here.
Frontispiece from
Yeah,
Spaziante, I believe. And
yeah. We see Knuckles and Archimedes just being buffeted by the desert winds and not having a good time with it.
just not loving it. Not loving it at all.
Um, but yeah, the narration, which incidentally the paragraphs of narration are also over some typically very difficult to make out illustrations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this particular one I can actually make out, and it shows just various relatives of Knuckles and ancestors,
Yeah.
including that scientist lady who went unnamed.
Yeah. Her and her beehive dreadlock hair.
Yeah, it was fast at the time.
Yeah.
I think she was later named as Angela,
Could be. Could be.
maybe.
I mean, we'll be
But
going over these Knuckles stories, so yeah.
yeah, we see various echidnas, including uh, the one is Knuckles' great grandfather.
Edmund.
No. His great grand one great.
Saber.
No, that's his grandfather.
Oh,
His father.
God. Oh, God. Affair.
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 That's it. Who
Uh,
one of the few echidna relatives, or the only echidna relative that Knuckles gets, that who wasn't actually made by Ken Penders, but was actually established earlier in the comic by Mike Gallagher, I think in the Tales miniseries?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's a character who will be appearing later on in Knuckles stories as well, since he's Knuckles' great-grandfather.
Yeah.
But yeah, feel free to go through this narration at the beginning.
Alright. Knuckles' ancestral heritage was one of duty and honor. Or so he had been led to believe. But today, a threat to the floating island and all existence has unveiled the dark side of Echidna civilization. His role as guardian of the Chaos Emerald, long thought the noblest of callings, is, in truth, atonement for the treachery of an ancestor who dared place himself above the greater good. That ancestor, the renegade echidna scientist named Dimitri, has survived 1,000 years of imprisonment beneath Mount Fate and returned to work his evil will as Enerjack, harbinger of chaos. The straits are dire, but Knuckles is not alone. At his side stands Archimedes the Fire Ant, ambassador of a race which shares a secret, symbiotic relationship with the Echidnas. A relationship dating back to the origins of the island, even though, in theory, their peoples are natural enemies. Now confronted by a greater evil, Knuckles and this unlikely ally must apply the lessons of the past to the present, or there will be no future for any of them. And it's there we find Archimedes and Knuckles in Sandopolis.
Yeah. Just trudging through the Sandopolis zone, which is a huge desert on the map from last issue, taking up like a quarter of the island about. Stretches like all along the western and over to the southern end of it.
Yeah.
So quite a thing to be lost in. Quite a desert to trek through.
Yeah.
And made worse by the presence of a giant sandworm.
Yeah, and man,
You ever seen Tremors?
It's just the worst. This sandworm.
Yeah, or as Knuckles names it, a sand crawler, the biggest he's ever seen.
Oh man.
And Knuckles mentions that they track their prey by body heat, which Archimedes makes good use of, throwing fire from his mouth to draw the worm away from Knuckles.
Yeah. It's asking, why not pick on a hotter tamale?
Archimedes lures the sandcrawler to a rock, teleports away, which that little fucker never explains how he does that.
Yeah.
Like he says it's like, oh, it's Mr. X, and oh, it's a magic trick, and it's like, but what are you doing? But you teleport. I saw you. He teleports. It's clearly not trickery. So
what the fuck, man?
But I don't think Archimedes ever fully reveals his secrets.
Uh, yep. We may never know.
Yeah, but using himself as bait, and before you know it, this one's on the rocks, he says. And we cut to nighttime after the sandcrawler. Crunches presumably its brains against the rock, which explodes.
Yes.
We cut to nighttime where Archimedes is helping Knuckles by roasting presumably sandcrawler meat on a stick. Don't ask me where they got the stick in the desert.
Ryan writes in chat, I guess you could say it bugs me how he never explains how he teleports. It makes me antsy.
Love you, Ryan.
Love you so much, Ryan. It's so fun. You're so fun. Thanks for sharing all this fun stuff with us.
Yeah, but mysterious, pieces of wood found in a desert aside,
it's here we get a retelling of how the floating island came to be floating.
yes, in this second version of events, we learn the fire ants side of things.
Yeah, they were there from the beginning.
We see the visuals of the presentation to explaining that there's a big white comet coming, but there's fire ants there.
Mm-hmm.
We see the mining of the Chaos Emeralds, but there's fire ants there.
Yeah.
And we see the emeralds being placed into the Chaos Chamber, but fire ants are again watching.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then finally we see fire ants doing something.
As the plan that was concocted, while inspiring, might never have worked if fire ants hadn't performed the groundbreaking ceremony, physically lifting the island up.
Yeah, so basically the fire ants cut the island away from the earth so that it could freely actually move and remove itself from the land.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I mean, it's entirely possible that it could have torn itself apart.
Yeah.
Or left half the city behind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just like logistical things that, they maybe didn't have time to think through and certainly didn't have the resources to actually, do it themselves. Mm-hmm. But a huge number of ants can do a lot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, Archimedes goes over again how Edmund and Dimitri thought up a method to return to the ground, except in Archimedes' version, Dimitri is glowering and frowning and just well, sweet pure Edmund is just like, oh look, we'll suck up the power from the emeralds and it'll be fine. It's very silly to me that in the original version of the tale, we saw Dimitri just be totally innocent, maybe just a little bit, with thoughts of unlimited power.
Yeah.
But overall, good-hearted. But then in the art for Archimedes' telling, it's slightly different story.
Progressed. And can I just say, I remember when we first read this, we remarked on how silly this was. But I've thought about it, and I've reconsidered, and I feel like this pretty well illustrates a tendency that crops up often in just society, in how we tend to, once new information is gained, we tend to collapse everything, your past events, even before anyone could have known, with that context. You see it most often in, when someone is revealed to be a bad person or something, or a bad actor, there's always someone chiming in with, well, I always had a bad feeling about them, and maybe they did, or maybe they're just rationalizing to themselves that they definitely had some idea before it happened, because it gives them some amount of security. It gives them some amount of, feeling like these things are predictable. Like, you can always tell, and there's no element of randomness. There's no, like, chance behind it. Everything is always so set, and that just makes life more simple for people to grasp. And I think it's, whether or not it's intentional, it's either way, like, it is an example of this that's illustrated very, very, very well, I think. Just Dimitri was just another scientist with his brother Edmund, but now that we know he since he went bad, it's just easier and simpler to just paint him as like someone who is just glowering, just sinisterly trying to get people to follow his plan, and just like, that just makes it a lot simpler than someone who was good just got pushed in a way that they weren't able to cope with.
Yeah,
that's just something I think about.
I think that's a very valid and neat observation there. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I just thought of it last time we read it for review purposes. But back to the review.
There's a neat little line in here in Archimedes' telling of the tale, where he mentions that the groundbreaking ceremony was not the first time they saved Echidna bacon, or the last.
Yeah.
I just like the implication that, like, even beyond the most ancient history we know of, which is, raising Echidnapolis into the sky, even further back than that, there was even more history with the fire ants.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Archimedes goes on.
Just going over what happened to Dimitri and the fallout of that, where afterward, fire ants had always been there, behind the scenes. Lending a helping hand is needed from generation to generation. We see in a panel here a fire ant being there for the ceremony of Edmund being, I guess, sworn in as the first guardian of the Master Emerald. Or guardian of the Floating Island, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
yeah, because there was no concept of, like, a Chaos Emerald in the comics, or anywhere outside of actually just the games, because, like, Sonic Underground as well just had the Master Emerald be just the Chaos Emerald, rather than being more significant than that. And again, Sega didn't tell people. They didn't send material.
No, they didn't.
And yeah, he mentions that this is why Archimedes has been testing Knuckles.
Yeah.
To make sure that he was up to the task that lie ahead. And then Dimitri returned his Enerzac, which was not part of the plan. Yeah. And not why he was testing Knuckles.
But here they are nonetheless.
Yeah.
Knuckles resolves that they've got to get back to the Grand Conservatory.
Well, also there's a fun little visual here where Archimedes is telling the story, and we have a little thought bubble showing as he gets to the part where Dimitri captures them and sends them to the desert. We see Dimitri capturing them and sending them to the desert. And then in the next page, in the thought bubble, while they are trapped in the desert, is the two of them being trapped in the desert.
It's pretty fun.
Because Archimedes is going over the part of the story we're at.
Yeah. Very fun. Very fun. And it's there we see just Enerjack soaring through the land and preparing to erect his new city over the former site of Echidnapolis.
Or should he say, the once and future site of Necronopolis.
Ooh, that name doesn't
Yeah.
really come back around, but
Well, no. Well,
it's no Eggman Land. It's not the thing that drives Dimitri like like Eggman Land does for Eggman.
yeah. But I think it's a good enough name, Necronopolis.
Yeah.
Uh, and while his laughter echoes through the night, Knuckles continues to trudge through the desert with Archimedes in his hand,
Mm-hmm.
exhausted, overheated, needing
Can
water
we take
and
a break real quick? Actually,
yeah.
all right. again. All right. Sorry about that. Something came up, but yeah, we're back again.
So as I was saying,
Hmm.
Knuckles in the desert, hot, desperate, needs water, needs food, and sees that he has a rather tasty-looking fire ant in his palm.
No, Knuckles.
I mean, echidnas are anteaters.
No, Knuckles.
So he pops Archimedes' mouth, and then Archimedes breathes fire inside Knuckles' mouth to make him spit him out.
Dooming Knuckles to a life of not being able to taste shit anymore, I assume.
And he tells Knuckles,
don't ever do that again.
and we return to the lower third being the Adventures of Enerzak, as we see him at the bottom of this page beginning to raise black stones from the ground to form his city.
Yes.
Knuckles stumbles through the desert as the sun rises and collapses.
And that's when he hears a voice calling his name.
While Enerzak raises the stones more. It's like very dramatic.
Yes.
As he's slowly building his city.
It looks really cool with the art. Not as much when we're recapping it.
Yeah, it's a very visual process
Yeah.
when Enerzak is doing things in the lower third.
Imagine something being very cool here. Thank you.
Yeah. But Knuckles stands up from the sand he's fallen into as he sees a mirage of his father.
Who tells him to be brave, very brave, as the path which lies ahead is a long and difficult one. I'm very much paraphrasing very directly from the comic.
Yeah.
And he tells Knuckles that Enerjack can be defeated. The key to their present peril is in his past. And Knuckles has come so far, too far, to surrender to despair. Especially when salvation...
Enerzak continues to rise the city, being surrounded now by squarest stones as they rise around him. Oh, right, sorry, Knuckles was doing a thing. Enerzak is here, though.
Wait, beyond the next. Rice. Yeah. Yeah. And
Knuckles doesn't believe his eyes as he beholds a hidden oasis.
A hidden oasis?
With palm trees and water.
Yeah.
What an oasis has is water. I think definitionally that's what makes it an oasis.
And Dimitri, an Enerjack update. The stones are so tall now.
The city continues to rise around Enerzak.
Yeah.
While Knuckles gets himself in that water, cools himself down.
Oh yeah, with a wonderful little sound effect, just splash, sploosh. He's just living it up. Yeah. Archimedes is eating some hot peppers, and then Archimedes remarks, they were lucky to find this place.
Knuckles says no, that luck had nothing to do with it. Someone or something meant for them to reach the stones that are rising are now completely obscured Enerzak. Oh right, Knuckles, you were doing a thing. Sorry.
The oasis.
He looks back to find that the oasis has disappeared, and he collected some water while he was there. And made a makeshift backpack. And Archimedes remarks that
it had to be there. Those hot peppers tasted so much better than sand. Oh, it was sand. No, it wasn't.
His actual line, for the record, is that would explain those hot peppers I was eating.
Yeah, I haven't been.
And Knuckles continues, and the supplies for these backpacks. Even though I think only Knuckles is wearing a backpack on account of Archimedes as an ant. They're not a mirage.
Yeah.
They must have come from somewhere or someone. But Archimedes has bigger concerns, because even if the oasis was a mirage, that huge city that is now finished in front is as real as it gets.
Oh no!
As they see, illuminated by the green glow of probably Enerzak, a very silhouette-y, dark silhouette. It's very ominous, but it doesn't have a lot of details. It's a
Yeah,
big silhouette.
yeah. Very Robotropolis, it feels like. But
Yeah, and on the next page we get a nice big old close-up of this dark and imposing city made of black stone.
actually, on the next page, we got fan art.
There is, and there was fan art last time, but since we didn't acknowledge it then, I thought we were not going to acknowledge it.
Yeah, but I remember this one fan art that is really fun. I just want to take a moment, to appreciate this Triple Trouble themed fan art featuring Fang the Knack going so long, dudes, and Tails pleading, "Please, Sonic, win!"
As Sonic and Knuckles face off, and both they say,
I hate you!
So thank you, Kanani Kabastok from Hawaii, for sending that fan art in to this comic so that we could enjoy it decades later.
Yeah. But
yeah,
we have a close up, as you said, of Necronopolis.
We have a close up on Necronopolis, and we can see that some of its buildings are much more clean and refined, while others just seem to be the black stone that Enerjack Rose is sort of jutting out.
Yeah.
And then Knuckles knocks on the shoulder of a robot enforcer, and then clong
knocks him out.
Knocks it out.
And when we were reading this earlier today, there was a moment where Cluster just referenced, just knock knock, it's Knuckles, and for that scene,
it felt appropriate,
and it was so fun. It was so fun.
Yeah.
And Knuckles remarks on just how Enerjack has recreated Echidnapolis into a dark, corrupt reflection of ancient history, which I think does kind of reflect how the flashbacks to those times have been morphing and shifting, as we go deeper into the story. And we, in the next page, learn of Enerjack's Citadel with lines of robots marching, doing the Wizard of Oz thing of yo yo yo. It's very, very fun. Knuckles kicks ass, just takes out a lot of those robots, setting them running and screaming. And
yeah, I mean, specifically, he jumps down into the thick of them, starts knocking them over, and then way too many come, which Archimedes berates him for, as every Mechanaut in the city is after us.
To which Knuckles replies, exactly.
And won't do his distant granduncle a whole world of good if they're out there, and we're in here.
He closes the gate along those robots that are now not able to...
Crossing a bunch of them, and then leaving the rest outside.
Where they can't guard the Citadel.
Mm-hmm. So, Knuckles, being very brass in his plan, but having a plan. Important.
Yeah. Good for him. Good for him.
Yeah, but Archimedes is still not happy that he was not even warned, and tells him to
give
warn
that
him
little warning first.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, and Knuckles apologizes.
Yeah, but then Knuckles notices that things have been too easy.
Yeah.
They've gotten too far with too little resistance.
Only to then get sucked in the head.
Well, first he gets tripped. Then he gets stung. Then a blast of music hits him. And then he is punched. As Espio, Charmy, Vector, and Mighty all assault him in turn.
as they are under the control of Enerjack.
Yeah, and we can see their eyes are glowing with green energy.
Mm-hmm.
And Knuckles dramatically states that to get at Enerjack, we have to fight the Chaotix. And we get our to be continued. And we also get our next map.
The map of Necronopolis, formerly Echidnapolis.
Yeah, and we can see all these many things that are here.
Less storied than the map of the floating island, which had some references to previous stories already in it, and just places where our pals live.
Yeah.
This
you
is
can
just
see where Mount Fate and the entrance to the Grand.
Yeah. Well, and you can see where the pit is. You can.
Yeah, the pit.
Yeah, the pit.
Everyone knows the pit.
There's the site of Eye in the Sky Observatory. Just what Enerjack's been setting up.
Yeah, there's a lot of labeled things, but this particular map doesn't mean a whole lot since, as we said, Necronopolis didn't really stick around.
Yeah. But that's the end of our second issue, and I feel like it really does build on Knuckles and Archimedes' relationship, which is really helpful because it's a big deal going forward.
Yeah, their bond and their struggles together are definitely very important.
Yeah.
Both for this story and for what's to come later.
Yeah.
And I think you really start to feel their budding friendship as this the second issue goes on.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think, just a good bit of inertia as we've got Axon, we've got Knuckles, struggling to, make sense of it. But we also see Knuckles, being more clever than he has been, where not thinking through his actions is what got the Chaotix kidnapped by Archimedes.
Yeah.
But now Knuckles is actually thinking a few steps ahead. He's jumping into the thick of things, seemingly not thinking, but actually, planning on trapping all the robots outside.
Yeah. Good on him.
Mm-hmm.
And that leaves us with one last issue.
Yeah, number 3 of Sonic's friendly Nemesis Knuckles.
And can I just say, as we cover 3 comics, as opposed to just 1, if not 2, we're making good time.
Yeah. Keeping in mind how much we do have to talk about, I think, has been prompting us to sort of keep a good clip on it.
Yeah, but it's going pretty good, I think. If I may move on to the next bit of narration.
Well, we do have yet another frontispiece.
Yes.
This one showing Knuckles and Archimedes in between Knuckles' legs, between his feet.
Yeah.
As they are assaulted by the Chaotix.
Yes. And it is a very, very neat frontispiece. And then you could see at the top right, Enerjack looming from the shadows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think definitely the second of the frontispieces would take my award for being the best. It was very good.
Oh, me too.
This is also very nice. Just, it gets a bit overshadowed by that really good second one.
That really good one of Enerjack. Just so good.
Yeah.
So good.
But, yeah. Third issue. Third bit of narration.
Deep within the heart of the Ebon Citadel, the fate of everything as we know it will be decided. A battle to be fought, with neither side offering or giving any quarter. Here, the past collides with the present, as descendant squares off against ancestor. The fiercest of opponents in any conflict are always those linked with the thickest of blood. For them, matters become more personal, as the struggle evolves from the mere physical contest to one of conquering the opponent's heart and soul. Up until now, Knuckles has been master of all he surveyed on the tropical paradise known as the Floating Island. content in the belief that his was a noble calling. Now he must fight for what he believes in, or surrender to a legacy of fear. Although guided by his mentor, the fire ant known as Archimedes, Knuckles may find he needs more than a little help. He may need a miracle as well. And then we open back up with Knuckles facing off against the Chaotix, who are finishing each other's sentences because they are all linked by the mind control of Enerjack.
Yeah.
And already the camaraderie we established with Archimedes and Knuckles begins to pay off in the final issue, as Archie, as he is come to known as, whispers conspiratorially in Knuckles' ear, "Wait for my signal." And Knuckles declares
that you may have us trapped cold, but we can still make it hot for you, as Archimedes breathes fire.
To which Vector humorously and excelsiorly replies, "Flame off, bud!" Because flame on is what Johnny Storm from the Fantastic Four says in the Fantastic.
Proceeding to say, "Or I'll really cool you off," as he grabs the
emergency rubber hose.
You know, because there's a fire, so you need to just break the glass, pull the fire hose out, and then as he sprays, somehow Knuckles and Archimedes have disappeared in a puff of smoke.
Also, Ryan, our friend in chat, writes, "Oh, I love that movie," in response to springing up Fantastic Four. Very fun. Very fun. But they seem to have disappeared.
Yeah, and I believe they're paraphrasing the Sado here. As one of them, I assume Archimedes, says, "Who knows what fear lurks in the hearts of those who have been duped."
And shortly after, Knuckles punches Espio in the face.
And says, "We know."
Because Vector asked, "Where's it coming from?" And then Knuckles says,
well, no, he was responding to "Who knows what fear."
Oh.
Because the answer is the Sado knows. Anyway, I don't know a lot about the Sado, but I know about that. It's a famous line and quote.
Viewers of this VOD, you all got to hear me get that part of the comic for the first time live on stream.
I guess it helped that I knew the reference, because it's who knows what something the Sado knows. I don't actually know that much about the Sado.
but Knuckles remarks that because Mighty isn't himself, it's easier to take him out. Tells Vector to sit this one out, and
then Archimedes just breathes fire on Sarmi, saying, "Sorry about this, kid.
But it better a bee than me."
Meanwhile, Enerjack, who's watching this all through a visual portal of chaos energy, is frustrated. Because he sort of anticipated this.
Yeah.
His mindless minions can't think for themselves. So he takes out Knuckles and Archimedes. We'll later learn that he removes the air from around them. So he temporarily suffocates them. And then commands his programmed puppets, in his own words, to bring them to him.
Yeah. I hate to call for a break again, but I just I think we're pretty casual here in these streams. I'll just mention I have to get this message from Don Best real quick.
Okay.
Be back in a bit.
If Don Best, known comic artist who worked on these comics, needs to contact you, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just get to that now. We'll be back. And we're live once more. Sorry about that. Yeah.
So Dimitri commands his brainwashed chaotix to bring Knuckles and Archimedes to him. After all, it's been a long time since he visited with the family.
And it's here we get Enerjack, or Dimitri's side of the events.
It's mostly just him gloating over it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I love that he just opens it with his monologuing version of events with, "Did you know that at one time the Echidnas were the most advanced species on Mobius?" Which is how Knuckles, of course, opened the first telling.
You may have heard a little bit about it.
You may have heard one or two things, you know?
Just one or two. Yeah. Oh, man.
And we see, once again, the story of Edmund and Dimitri, and once again Dimitri is glowering during the presentation.
Seems even more angry.
He's in Dimitri's own retelling.
Yeah. I mean,
Dimitri is even angrier.
Dimitri is currently high as fuck on Chaos Emeralds, so he's not in his
he's not
rational
in a
state of
very
mind.
good state of mind while he's Enerzac. It's
So and it's reflected here in this retelling. Like,
yeah, you know that phrase about absolute power and the amount with which it corrupts?
Yeah. So we learned that he did not die, and for untold generations he lay in utter blackness until the time was right for his rebirth. And with his renewed life force, he emerged, free to conquer a world and beyond.
Mm-hmm. And he comments that, of course, of all who could possibly stand in his way, the descendants of the people who thwarted him the first time, he figured were the biggest threats. So he removed them first, and he admits amazement that they made it through the desert.
Yeah.
And
Knuckles makes a little gambit here.
He says, "Oh, we're not really here, you know. We're a mirage. You're imagining things in your state of delusional grandeur." And then thinks to himself that Enerzac doesn't know about the Oasis.
Yeah. Which is interesting.
Yeah, but of course Enerzac is not amused by Knuckles' comment.
Yeah.
Says, "Don't mock me, young pup," and starts showing off how mighty he is by throwing Knuckles to the ground with a blast of energy, very casually.
Mm-hmm. Ryan writes in chat, "I've been there." I don't know the exact context, but yeah.
And he starts to brag about his power that Knuckles can't comprehend, and it's so limitless, and how we'll be creating a tower from the earth, but this time it will be collapsing anytime soon. To which Knuckles comments, "Don't be so sure. History just might repeat itself."
And that is Archimedes. Is like, right, Archimedes? And
bumps him with his elbow.
and Archimedes, after nursing his broken fucking ant elbow.
I mean, ants are actually pretty durable.
Oh, I see. Thinks to himself.
They have very proportional, their strength compared to the body.
Ryan writes, "High on Chaos Emeralds, LOL." Alright. But, thank you for that, thank you. But Archimedes thinks, "Truer than even you know, Echidna." And
as he uses his previously not sown psionic abilities that all the fire ants have to communicate with the rest of the fire ants through their antennae.
Yes.
This is an ability that I believe comes up later, but not often. We don't. The fire ants didn't get called upon very often, but you know.
Yeah. And
now the lower third is actually taken up by fire ants. So you see fire ants responding to the call, and then Enerzac flings Knuckles and Archimedes across the room once again.
Just shoving him around.
Yeah. Just really, really wanting them to be impressed with him. Well, at least Knuckles believes so, as he asks, so are we supposed to be impressed?
And Jack's like, no!
You're supposed to quake in mortal terror at the fate I've in store for you. He wanted them to be impressed.
He really wanted them to be impressed, but they're not.
Yeah.
It's fucking with them.
Yeah. And we see as the fire ants are running to come to Necronopolis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Jack
states that this is one time they cannot escape. And
he bids them adieu immediately before Archimedes teleports them.
And
but Enerzak is saying that does you really think some cheap parlor trick will help you elude him?
You know, because it's just all smoke and mirrors. You know,
yeah.
That's what Archimedes said, and
yeah, and he says, just as I stemmed the flow of air from allowing you to breathe, they vanished.
It's just fucking gone.
As he just finds smoke. It's just smoke. They're not there.
I mean, Archimedes telling the truth. It is just smoke. They're not there anymore.
Yeah. And we see many, many fire ants now running for Necronopolis.
So many dang fire ants.
Mm-hmm. And Enerzak calls to his brainwashed chaotics, who are playing poker.
Oh, man.
In a break room, and demands that they go and locate and capture Knuckles and Archimedes.
And they go forth, onward, to capture Knuckles and Archie for the master, Enerjack.
Only for Knuckles and Archimedes to have been hiding around the corner, and and Archimedes drops the illusion so that we can see them.
Yeah.
As the chaotics are off, running after them where they are not.
Yes.
And we see many, many fire ants crossing the bridge into Necronopolis.
Mm-hmm. And next, of course, it's time for Archimedes and Knuckles to prepare their counterattack. And Knuckles wonders how to do that, how Archimedes proposes to do that.
And Archimedes responds mostly by teleporting them into the air vent above where Enerzak is.
Yeah.
Which, again, how does he do it? How does he do it?
Where's the fucking mirrors there? But, then Archimedes, states that they have an ace up their sleeve.
Knuckles asks, we do?
And Archimedes responds, we do. And,
comments that, for some reason, his illusion trick, as Knuckles put it,
keeps them concealed from Enerjack.
From Enerzak.
And,
so they get into position, and the fire ants are now climbing on top of the citadel.
And then...
And Knuckles...
so excited.
Knuckles has the bright idea for how to do their counterattack.
Yes.
Of stomping through the air vent, yelling surprise, and then while standing on top of Enerzak, holding up Archie in his hand and saying, yep, this is a plan, all right.
Archimedes, understandably, just exclaims, well, don't just stand on top of him!
And says, cuff him. Not that Knuckles has cuffs.
No.
And so Enerzak just gets up, throwing Knuckles off, and yells, enough! As anyone would. This is ridiculous. And the ants are climbing on top of the tower, which is where they are, the highest room.
But Enerjack just berates his descendant.
What did you hope to accomplish with that maneuver? That I'd laugh myself silly? How disappointing. I at least expected better of you, Echidna, he says.
To which Knuckles replies...
that the name's Knuckles, Enerzak. Or should I say, Great Uncle Dimitri? Oh.
That is his name. From
And he
before.
declares that
Yeah.
Dimitri is the only Echidna who ever put himself over his own kind. Which, bold claim, but he's mostly just, trying to get under Dimitri's skin.
Yeah, and Ryan writes
And he
in chat.
says,
Ryan writes in chat. Oh, I love Knuckles so fucking much. I sure
Knuckles
do
are so
too.
good.
Oh man, I love Knuckles. This is such a
He
plan.
declares, he's so good. He declares he's known about Enerzak for a long time, and that he is what he is because of Enerzak.
Mm-hmm.
To which, Enerzak replies, no. You are who you are because of my spineless brother. You are who you are because of all the sacred seep on the Grand Council. And, rockets are being attached by some mystical force.
Not the ants who are still just climbing up the tower.
Yeah, but rockets start to be being attached to the tower room where Knuckles is fighting Enerzak. So that's interesting.
Fighting Enerjack, who is monologuing still.
Yeah, declaring that the sacred seep, as he says on the council, didn't have his vision or his courage. To which Knuckles retorts, "You call this courage? Fighting with enhanced strength?"
The jets that were so strangely just being attached are now clamped onto the tower.
Yeah. And Enerzak declares that he only needs his raw, natural strength to take out Knuckles.
Mm-hmm.
And Knuckles says that he may be stronger, but does he know how to fight? As he slams his fists down on Enerzak.
And Enerjack has this really, really good line, I think.
Where he says, "I have forgotten more than you have learned," and asks, "Where's your bravado now, great nephew?" As the jet engines roar into life outside.
Mm-hmm.
And Knuckles says that his bravado is with his pride and honor, qualities that Knuckles will never lose, and that Enerzak never had.
And then the floor breaks between Enerjack, Knuckles, and Archimedes, leaving Knuckles and Archimedes to fall as the tower soars into space.
Yeah, being taken from rockets and taking Enerzak with them.
Mm-hmm.
Knuckles tells Archie to hang on, actually giving him that nickname for the first time now, even though you've been using it for a while.
Yeah.
Declares he's switching to glide mode.
And of course, our editor, Justin Gabri, notes Archie is pronounced Archie.
Yeah, because it's spelled Archy. So you might think artsy?
No, Archie.
Archie. Because it's short for Archimedes.
Yeah, and Justin Gabri, the editor, remarks, "I guess Knuckles is feeling pretty good."
Mm-hmm.
And Knuckles lands pretty darn
safely
well.
amongst the fire ants.
Yeah.
Archimedes thanks them all for doing what they could, but the fire ants note that they had nothing to do with launching Siddle into space, and all they did was create an escape route so that Knuckles and Archimedes could get away.
Yeah.
Our Archimedes seems baffled.
Yeah.
By learning this.
Mm-hmm.
And then Necronopolis vanishes.
Like a bad nightmare. Yeah.
And the Chaotix wake up. SPO says that he feels like his head's been stomped on, and Knuckles says that he looks like his head's been stomped on.
And Charmy exclaims, "Knuckles!"
Tommy's great.
Yeah, and the Chaotix just cheer for Knuckles, and saying he's done it again, but how'd he do it this time?
Well, for once, guys, he can't take the credit.
Mm-hmm.
Knuckles says it was a combination of things that added up when he put them together. His dad's story, plus Archimedes's, plus Enerzak's. He says that he never could have defeated Enerzak on his own.
And it's here that the miniseries just lays out its statement. It's a moment of character development for Knuckles that has been kind of hinted at throughout this, from Archimedes' training early before the miniseries all the way to the end here. Knuckles has to learn to work with others and depend on unlikely sources for help, because he can't do everything as a loner. He can't be an island.
Yeah. He says, until now I was basically a loner, relying only on myself. I think Enerzak sensed that and figured I wouldn't go beyond that. I simply learned from history. Enerzak didn't.
Archimedes adds, for all his omnipotence, even Enerzak didn't know about the oasis we found in the middle of nowhere. And we still haven't a clue where it came from or disappeared to. To which Vector replies, who cares?
The good guys won anyway. Mikey chimes in.
And Charmy declares, let's party!
It's a fun ending.
Oh, it really is.
On the next page, we see Charmy's voice line of "Let's party again," as we see.
Our
I think for the
mysterious
first
benefactor.
time in the miniseries proper.
Yeah.
It's the mysterious person who was watching Knuckles.
Who remarks that Knuckles has conducted himself nobly and well. And mentions that by distracting Enerjak through valiant combat, Knuckles allowed him to complete the rocket engines that carried him from this world. And without Knuckles' efforts, all would have been lost. Stating that Knuckles understood the message of history. We are all together as one. And that he accepted Archimedes as an ally gladdens our mysterious benefactor further. Though natural opposites, both echidnas and fire ants are intertwined for mutual benefit. Thus, their relationship continues. As for this one...
I mean, you might as well just quote him fully.
As for me, I shall keep a watchful eye as my forefathers have done for countless generations. For isn't it the father's duty to look after his son? And it's there we learn this is...
Indeed. As one might have picked up if one noticed the similarity, as you do just see him full face, but you might not have remembered how he looked. This is Knuckles' father, who Knuckles does not know is alive, as he, disappeared. Don't know if that story has been told at this point, how he disappeared into a wall of fire, but it's told at some point in all these comics.
Yeah. And, I definitely want to just continue on the note of just this Knuckles miniseries statement on the character of Knuckles, but after we finish this last couple pages.
There's a few more pages.
Yeah. Archie, of course...
after seeing Knuckles' dad in his little high-tech monitoring chamber, we move to Archimedes and Knuckles, just hanging out after everything.
And Archimedes is, for once, giving Knuckles some credits, which just feels good after everything. Just saying that, after he made initial contact, he didn't think Knuckles could adapt to new situations, but Knuckles surprised him. And he'll admit Knuckles has shown him that he's up to the task of being guardian of the floating island. Just don't want to get to his head.
Yeah, and Knuckles says, you're okay yourself, Archie.
For a fire ant, that is.
And he says, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And they have a little high five, which is very size differential because Archimedes is an ant.
We get a nice, beautiful shot of the floating island floating above the rising sun over planet Mobius. And then elsewhere, in the epilogue, the Citadel continues to fly.
Goes off into space while Enerzak's laughter echoes somehow, even though it's in space. Don't worry about it. And we get a little the end for now. As Enerzak will return on His Majesty's Secret Service. What? And that is the miniseries.
Yeah, there's like a map of the Citadel of Darkness, so we don't really need to go over too deeply, but
Yeah, but you can see where Knuckles fought Enerzak and where the Chaotix were playing poker and
So fun. So fun.
Yeah.
Great for card playing lackeys. But yeah, that's the Knuckles miniseries. And
Mm-hmm.
now that we finished covering the events of it, I want to just take a moment to talk about just what it states.
Yeah.
Because
Because you go on. You go on.
yeah, with Knuckles, much like Superman initially, he was established as the last of his kind. And there's only so much you can do with that in a story, Ken has stated. And so
You kind of, after you've, exhausted what you can do with it, you either have to move away from caring about him being an echidna at all,
mm-hmm.
or just stop telling stories about him.
And nowadays, in the modern day, with Sonic comics, anyway, and just among just people who are in the know about Sonic, there's a lot of just talk about Knuckles as a guardian and what he needs to do in order to be a good guardian, and like, there's all this talk of like, oh, he shouldn't ever leave his station at the Master Emerald, or he's failing as a guardian. He can't be there for his friends, he can't be present, he can't do anything because he's failing as a guardian of the Master Emerald. And he must act as the very land he resides on, an island. And this comic just states, no. No, he can't be a loner. He can't keep that up sustainably. He needs people.
Yeah, he needs his
We've already established the Chaotix, and it was a single-minded approach to solving a problem that led to them getting kidnapped.
Yeah, because Knuckles didn't rely on them. He didn't stick with them. He just focused on trying to solve the problem himself, rather than trying to work with his friends rather than trying to keep his friends safe. And that led to Archimedes being able to capture all of them very easily, even.
Yeah, and it's the lesson Knuckles learned from that led to him being able to work so well with Archimedes.
Yeah, because it is only through his teamwork with Archimedes that any of this works. Like, they barely get out of there against Enerzak. Like, it's only through a mixture of Knuckles, riling Enerzak up and making him just not immediately kill Knuckles with his massive amount of power.
Yeah.
That allows him to survive at all, and allows him to buy enough time for Archimedes and Locke to actually, deal with Enerzak properly with the help of the fire ants.
Yeah.
To help him escape.
Mm-hmm. And it just does my heart good to see this. It does my heart good to see just a comic, a story that just handles this like an adult, like maturely. Like, we're going into this. We're talking about Knuckles and his role, Knuckles and his duty to his people, to his mission, to his land.
Yeah.
And all with all the talk that happens, it just feels like this is such a simple answer that the comic so very well just lays out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. I like the answer that this comic, this miniseries gives us for Knuckles. Whether he, on the question of, is he an island or is he an echidna? He is an echidna, and he has friends, he has family, he has history that he must rely on and learn from in order to solve the problems of the present and the future. And
Yeah.
all of that history, that family, all that was established in these comics.
Mm-hmm.
Not in any manuals. The manuals didn't say, I don't think, how the floating island started floating. It didn't say like,
Well, certainly not the English ones anyway.
yeah, and we don't really hear much about Knuckles' dad anywhere in the Sega games, and we don't.
Mm-hmm. Or anyone who's a direct relative of Knuckles.
Yeah, because Patch Kamek and Tikal, they both died.
Yeah, and we have no idea. We have no idea who lived on to eventually, the
Yeah.
family continue. That was thousands of years, I think,
Mm-hmm.
or however long, and it's like, so Knuckles was descended from someone who didn't die then.
Yeah. But
But yeah, with this comic and this storyline in particular, we get a history of Knuckles and a history of also what is a Guardian.
yeah.
Because Knuckles was introduced as like the Guardian, but I mean even to this day that's not really something that's ever been explored in in like the games or anywhere outside of I think this comic series.
Yeah, and
Of like how did that start? How did that continue? How who taught Knuckles to be a guardian? Who raised him?
because when we flash back to the time of Tikal, there's no Echidna just sitting by the shrine by the Master Emerald. There's no guardian of the Master Emerald.
Yeah, well, the guardian of the Master Emerald back then is Chaos,
Yeah.
the original guardian of the Emerald.
Mm-hmm.
In the Sonic Adventure game, and of course that hadn't happened by this time.
Yeah, it would be multiple years. And this is a comic that's 25 years old, going on 26.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and ultimately in Sonic Adventure, the Knuckles story ends on him just being like, well, I sure don't have answers.
Yeah, and
Probably
then,
won't get any answers.
and then there's the Supersonic story, which barely acknowledges anyone except for Tikal, Chaos, and Supersonic. So Knuckles doesn't get any closer there either.
Yep. Then in Sonic Adventure 2, he recites Tikal's prayer, and still doesn't really get any closer.
Yeah. Whereas
yeah,
there's a lot more going on here. There's a lot more focus put on Knuckles since he is actually getting to be the main character of this story and for many stories afterwards.
and I think it does a disservice to anyone coming to critique this book for not being word for word a carbon copy of what was established in the games. I think I think it would do us all it would do you all well to just try and think as a writer for this. What is needed for a story is not necessarily the same as what is pretty satisfying for you when playing a game and looking for lore.
Yeah, and Ken Penders and Mike Kantarovitz came up with this story and this version of a Knuckles history and this Knuckles fighting a villain.
Yeah.
And if it had been different writers who had been somehow assigned to work on Knuckles, and a different writer or writers who had decided to expand onto the backstory of Knuckles the Echidna, we'd have a very different comic.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of just Ken has stated that a big reason why he specifically made the shift to going on and writing the Knuckles ongoing series rather than continuing to write for Sonic himself is that there was a lot less with Knuckles that was already established. With Sonic there was mostly going off of the Saturday morning cartoon continuity, and there were a lot of supporting characters already, and there was a lot established.
Yeah.
But Knuckles was more or less a blank slate.
Yeah.
Even with Knuckles Chaotix being a game that didn't actually give any more story to Knuckles, it just gave Knuckles some friends. and they became the core supporting cast that would continue to be there in the comic
Yeah.
as it became an ongoing series. But there are a lot more elements that were added in, and we will be talking a lot about those as we continue to review more Knuckles stories.
Yeah, because like the extent of what Sega had done for Knuckles, by years after this Sonic Adventure, still I think only amounted to the beginning of a beginning.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, like, and they would establish Knuckles Chaotix, of course, like with like his friends, and then they don't show up in Sonic Adventure.
Yeah,
Or Sonic Adventure 2.
Knuckles gets reset to being a loner on the island in Sonic Adventure. The events of Knuckles Chaotix never even get acknowledged, and when the Chaotix do return,
They are very different.
their history is completely disentangled from Knuckles, and they no longer know each other outside of meeting in heroes.
And thus any development that could have been made for Knuckles is just vanished like that. And
Yeah.
but here there is so much we get for Knuckles in this comic. And there's something I want to kind of go over here, that I think a lot of people take for granted, because there's definitely this tendency among people on the internet who just act as if the internet has always been here, we've always had it. Why weren't the writers just consulting the Sonic News Network whenever they needed to check up on knowledge? That's not the case. And things have not always been as they are. Things have not always been established before, and we've not always had all the stories we have right now. And in point of fact, Knuckles didn't have his modern characterization at the time of this miniseries.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't believe it, because he just acts how Knuckles acts in this comic before that was even a thing.
Keeping allowances for individual writers' flair and, Ken and Mike's particular style of dialogue, the Knuckles that is written here is very much basically the kind of Knuckles that would continue to go on to be in the games later on, at least in the broad strokes.
Yeah, and that's really fascinating, because like that wasn't anything they had available to them. There was there was like reaching out, there was like, okay, give me something to work with this character, and there was none of that. They couldn't get any information no matter how hard they tried. And I think
for those who haven't actually looked at statements from either Ken or other people working on the the Sonic comic books back in the 90s,
yeah,
Sega was notably, and Sega of Japan apparently in particular, was notably very uncooperative, as apparently Sega of Japan and Sega of America didn't have a great line of communication back then.
Yeah.
Nowadays, the completely different corporate culture. They've had multiple corporate upheavals since.
Yeah.
And of course, we have the internet now, which just makes it way easier to communicate.
Yeah.
So we live in a very different world with Sega nowadays, where the amount of communication and how communication gets done to the modern licensed comics is a very different story compared to how things were, back during these times, where there was basically no communication. Ken has recounted how, he and Mike Kantarovitz would make scripts and they'd send them in, and they'd basically get a yes or a no, with no real sense of what they actually wanted. And that's a big reason why Ken started moving the comic in a more serious direction when he started writing it for it more.
Yeah.
The Sonic comic is just because no one involved in the creation of the comic at first actually had any ideas for what it should be beyond just, another piece of Sonic marketing. Because as you may remember, this was Sonic in the 90s. Sonic was everywhere. There were multiple cartoons. Mm-hmm. There was this comic series. There was another comic series over in Britain.
Mm-hmm.
There was just all sorts of Sonic media all over the place. And it really felt like it was just Sega all of its no matter whether it was of America, of Japan, or of Europe, just you know throwing stuff at a wall and seeing what stuck, and just trying to put Sonic everywhere. And hey, we still talk about Sonic today, so I guess it worked.
Yeah. Oh, but we are definitely going to be covering yet more of this these Knuckles comics, as well as just Archie Sonic comics.
Yeah.
Because they are something very special that we very much admire.
Yeah, we definitely don't plan on covering the entirety of it. That's something we actually tried to do a while back, but
Oh
it's just
yeah,
2 months.
yeah. That's yeah. We're
That
not
was
going to be able to
that was
go.
before our current Twitch channel setup.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to go Mobius and back again, but we'll be able
Yeah,
to. We'll cover what we can, what we want to, what we feel like, and
yeah.
just have a very loose feel for it.
Our general loose plan is that, similar to this, we'll just pick out either specific miniseries or specific story arcs, or maybe like a specific super special, and we will just cover them individually. Though we do plan on covering the entirety of the Knuckles the Echidna comic series, as it went on a fair amount of time,
Yeah,
but not so long to make it like a a very difficult prospect to look at and think of reviewing. We
like
can definitely
yeah,
handle that.
32 issues is longer than a lot of series get. It's very respectable, but also
Mhm.
crucially, it's not like we're trying to cover the entirety of the Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah, and like the main Sonic series went on for, gosh,
20 from 1993 to 2016, 2017 or
so
so.
like 23, 24 years. This,
Yeah, 23. Let's just go with 23.
yeah, 23 years as opposed to something like 3.5 for Knuckles or 4 is. So it's a difference of 20 years in
Yeah,
covering just Knuckles versus covering all of Sonic.
but there's so dang much you get out of Knuckles, the series,
Yeah,
and I'm so glad it happened exactly as it did.
it's wonderful, and I look so much forward to talking about all of those Knuckles stories because,
Yeah.
in my opinion, honestly, if you're gonna read anything from the old Archie Sonic and you just want to go for quality,
Mm-hmm.
just read the Knuckles series. I think in terms of like median quality, that's your best bet. You're gonna get just some real highlights.
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, I'm really excited for that. I'm excited for us to meet Kragok and Julie Sue and eventually Leenda and just mm, mm, cool things,
Mm-hmm.
cool things. Love these comics. Love
Yeah.
talking about them with y'all.
Mm-hmm. We're gonna meet a lot more fun characters, and I think we're gonna have a lot more to say as there are more original to the comic characters and original to the comic events occurring. Because
Can take a break real quick.
yeah.
Sorry. And we're live again. So, sorry about all the breaks here. Things are happening, but yeah,
Life happens when you're living. That's what my mom says.
it's a good saying. But yeah, definitely had a great time talking about Knuckles comics with y'all, and we look forward to doing it again soon.
Yeah.
Anyone watching?
I just want to say that I feel like we'll definitely have more to say as we go through the Knuckles stories, because a lot of what I'm thinking about, like when Enzak comes up and Dimitri comes up, and like when everything is happening, it's just like I'm remembering what's yet to come, and I guess it's hard for me to comment on such early days when there is so much more that we're going to be getting as we go through. So
Yeah.
But yeah, anyone watching here live, if you're not following currently, feel free to give us a follow. We try to stream on Tuesdays like right now, or Thursdays like 2 days from now, because that's how days work.
Yeah.
And we are planning to, probably on Thursday, unless we're just feeling really spicy on Wednesday, reviewing the latest issue of the current Sonic the Hedgehog comic series, published by IDW.
Written by Evan Stanley.
Yeah, a writer we quite enjoy, so...
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
But we're looking forward to it, and if you're watching from YouTube, you can go ahead and subscribe, leave a like, and comment if you like. And yeah, we'll be back when we are. And till then, I'm Felicia Rondo, and that's Cluster over there.
Hi.
And bye.
Bye.